Guy.
Thanks. Can everyone hear me better on the phone?
Yeah, that's working great.
Okay, great. So actually that presentation, Linda, is great because our next presentation by Lisa Sheffield Guy from Arcus is introducing a project that actually has been going on for quite a few years now, the SIWO Walrus Outlook. And we were hoping to bring in a couple of our community observer collaborators who are part of this project, but I don't see anyone on the phone. Frank Johnson, if you're on the phone, please feel free to introduce yourself. But I think I'll go ahead and let Lisa get started with the presentation. Are we okay with the slide sharing?
Yes, I will share my screen. And I have a bit of a slow internet connection, so if the slides aren't moving, other people have a copy of my talk. Just start pinging me in the chat window or yelling, and I will switch it over. Okay, can everyone see?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
I can go ahead and share the slides for you.
So you just have a blank screen?
Yeah, it's now we see it. If you can, it's just going a little slowly, it looks like.
Okay, it's one slide. It shouldn't be going anywhere. But yeah, we can switch over to someone else sharing if that's better.
Okay, I will share my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll just say next slide whenever I need to advance it. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to talk about the SIWO Walrus Outlook, and I will just talk briefly about the project and give a short update on our 2000. Okay, go ahead and go to the next.
Sorry, just 1 second.
No problem.
Oh.
I think if you just use that arrow. And I'm kind of there. Okay. So for those of you not familiar, the Sea Ice for Walrus Outlook is a weekly forecast of weather and sea ice conditions created for the Bering Strait region specifically. And it's a mix of sea ice products, weather forecasts, and observations from locals in coastal communities. And the reason why this was started was for safe travel and food security support for subsistence hunters, local communities, and just other people who might be traveling through the area. And the project is funded by the National Science Foundation Arctic Sciences Division. It's managed by the Arctic Research Consortium of the US, which is where I work. And our partners in producing the outlooks every week are the Eskimo Walrus Commission, primarily Vera Metcalf there, the National Weather Service Alaska Sea Ice Program, our amazing local observers in communities, and the sea ice scientists at UAS, International Arctic Research Center, including Olivia. And next slide. Okay, so the Outlook started back in 2010 in response to community needs for more location-specific weather and sea ice information for safe travel. And all of the past outlooks since the beginning are available and on our website, so they're all accessible there. We currently just focus the forecast on the spring sea ice season, and that's primarily around the subsistence walrus harvest, but it's also useful for other subsistence. And in the next few slides, I'll give some examples of the specific products that we share in the Outlook. And They are currently just on our website and Facebook as social media, but we're also considering other ways to get them out to the community. Okay, next slide. So each week we use satellite images of sea ice, and there are typically 3 images provided by the National Weather Service. So the one that you see here that's kind of a regional Bering Strait will have that image along with another one closer up on St. Lawrence and another one closer on the Strait. And then opportunistically, we will include whatever other satellite images or information we can get, but they're not always available every week. So if anyone here has suggestions for sea ice images or other products that might be interesting to locals, please share them with me after. Okay, next. Each week we include a weather forecast for the coming week, and that includes wind direction and speed, and the temperature trends expected, and also what the sea ice is expected to do in the coming 5 days. So we include this map. And one thing that's a bit different than if you were to go to the NOAA website or other places to get this information is we use really small image files, so less than 800 kilobytes, because most of the people using this have very poor internet connections, kind of like some of us on this call today. And it's hard for them to open up the big files. So if I put a 2 megabyte satellite image on there, no one can open it. So we keep them kind of small. Okay, next. And this map shows the 5 communities that we're currently focused on. On St. Lawrence, we have Gambell and Savunga. And then mainland Shishmaref, Wales, and Nome. These are all communities that are actively hunting walrus. And in 2018, we also hope to add Little Diomede server there, information. We have great observers in each of these communities that really do a terrific job with monthly, or not monthly, but weekly reports, including written observations and photographs. And so we had an 11-week season this year, and we received 43 reports total, so averaging about 4 observations per week. And then I'll give you some specific examples of what the local observations look like. Okay, next. So one thing that I really like about Sea Ice for Walrus Outlook, and it's something I liked before I even came onto this project, was that the local observations are presented alongside the scientific information with equal emphasis. So it's not using indigenous knowledge as a supplement or an addition. It really is a critical component of the weekly outlook. And this is also a really useful way for communities to share information with each other. So in addition to just logging on and seeing what is expected in the coming week for their own community, they can look a little bit to the north or to the south and see how ice is moving, or if it's starting to rot, if conditions are safe or not, or how game are moving nearby. Okay, next. The local observations are also valuable to scientists or other people traveling in the area, and they can provide validation of other observations and forecast models by providing really detailed on-the-ground observations. And I think it's the next slide. Go ahead and change it. I'm going to give a couple of specific examples from this last season. I'm not going to read them to you, but I'll just give you a minute to scan through. And if I know there was a chance that Boogles might call in, if he did, this would be a great time to jump in and talk to us. So feel free to interrupt me if you're on the phone out there, Boogles. But you can see these are really detailed weekly reports. They're often quantitative, and they have a lot of great information on when it's safe to go out or where it's not safe to be. and also just detail on the quality and character of the ice that we're not able to get from satellite images. So there are weeks and weeks and weeks of these observations online. So you're all welcome to look through them. Okay, next. So looking ahead to the next year, we've been working on some proposals. We'd like to have a community workshop where we bring together our local observers, the National Weather Service folks, UAF, and ARCIS people physically in the same place, because this project has been going for a little over 7 years, and a lot of us have not met each other in person. And it would be a really good chance to talk with the local observers and see how we could improve our product going forward and hear more about their ideas. And we'd also like to do an external evaluation of our network and see where we could improve. And then finally, I have been talking post-season to our observers to get ideas for how to improve outreach to the communities and make sure people even know this is available to them, and think about other ways aside from the internet to deliver the Outlook to communities. And then just one last slide. And I will leave you with our website link, and there you can sign up for a weekly email where during the spring season, I will send you a weekly reminder that the Outlook's available. You can also follow us on Facebook, and there we post things year-round that are related to sea ice in the Bering Strait and how walrus are doing. And finally, if you are not an ARCIS member, I would invite anyone to join us. We do a lot of great stuff, and we can take a few questions or.
Thanks, Lisa. Are there questions?
Hi, this is Jim Overland. Just another couple of brief points. When it got started, there was a high resolution satellite images that were available in Alaska Weather Service that weren't generally available, and this was what was needed for the high resolution images that the users could identify with. Also, sea ice is an integral of the wind, so we figured that a 1 week outlook was doable because it had more to do with tracking shifts from one air mass to another than tracking individual storms. So there was a lot of early thought that went in that this could be a viable product that it turned out with. The other one, as Lisa brought up, there were quite a few logistical issues that were overcome in the first few years to make this a real usable product. So I think from the IARPIC point of view, this was a real useful product that took joint effort and wouldn't have been available without that intensive start.
Thank you, Jim. It's nice to hear your voice. Our offices used to be across each other.
Are there some other questions?
Jackie, it's Martin.
Yep. Go for it, Martin.
I feel slightly silly bringing this up or asking the question because I had a small role in writing the performance elements for the sea ice goal, but I can't remember if the sea ice outlook is mentioned specifically in our research objectives and performance elements. Notwithstanding that, I think you can find a home for it somewhere in our performance elements, and I'd encourage the Sea Ice Walrus team, particularly at the end of their spring season when the Walrus Outlook closes, to write up a report on that season, and an evaluation and so on, and get it into our reporting on Arctic Research Plan.
Thanks, Martin. I can't remember either, and I should because I've been looking at these performance elements recently, but I absolutely concur. And maybe Meredith, you can follow up with Lisa to get a summary for posting.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay, thanks. I'm assuming, Lisa, you'll be willing to do this, or somebody.
Yeah, I have a summary I can share.
Okay, excellent. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Olivia. I'll add really quickly too that, this project, even though we've been going for 7 years, has been going on a shoestring budget. So, there are some agency folks who are on this call. You can think of ways that you could either build on some of the products or improve some of the products. It's great to collaborate more with our community observers in exchange for supporting this project to keep it going. I encourage you to touch base with Lisa or myself. Thanks.
Good point. Lisa, I had a couple questions. The first one is with regard to the observer reports that you get, do you tend to get them from specific, the same person all the time, or how varied are those reports from their source?
Almost all of our reports come from the same people every week. We have really dedicated observers, but we do get occasional reports from other people as well. So we really do have a primary 1 or 2 observers in each village that are just really regular reporters. And some of them, like Curtis, who I gave an example of, he's been there since the very first Outlook in 2010.
Great. Yeah, I was just going to ask how much from year to year do you have the same person? My second question is, how have you seen the usage of the CI's Walrus for Walrus Outlook develop over the years since its existence?
So that might be something I might have to invite Helen on to speak more to, because I've only been working on the project for a couple of years. But I will say that just compared to the last couple of years and this year, we've really ramped up our use of social media. So the Facebook page, where now we are posting each local observation as a separate post every week, and the forecast as a separate post. And we have a lot of people. I think there are 29 different communities in Alaska now that follow that. And so that gets more traffic than our website. But our website traffic has actually improved quite a lot too, probably because of the social media pushing people to it. So I think that we can do better at reaching people and just letting people know it's out there.
Great, thank you. Helen, did you have any comments you wanted to add?
Yeah, my video's not working, but you can hear me, I think. Yeah, so exactly what Lisa said, and it definitely, we've had more sort of informal feedback, and then Kerouac actually did a sort of a written survey a few years back as well, that it is seen as really useful. What we don't have is sort of a more like quantitative evaluation, and that's exactly what we're trying to find funding to do, is sort of, really tracing this down to, the users, what's most useful for people, what's less. We've gotten a lot of requests for thinking about expanding it either to other regions or even other countries, just as a model for how this kind of thing can work. So it's a really good question, and we want to know too, sort of some more quantitative aspects of that. So
okay,
we've got a proposal out to do just that.
Okay, cool, good. Well, I certainly hope that you get a bite on the proposal you have for a workshop. That sounds like it would be real timely. And Sarah and Martin and Meredith, I don't know whether you'll choke on this notion, but I'm wondering if there's a role that the IARPG collaboration team can play in trying to facilitate a discussion around some of the questions that have been raised as part of this presentation. We were talking just the other day about trying to augmenting or complementing these presentations with some focused discussion Would that be a possibility? And Lisa and Helen and Olivia, would that be something you'd be interested in following up with?
I'll take all the help we can get, for sure.
Well, it's Martin. It seems to me that that's an entirely appropriate activity for the Sea Ice collaboration team, bringing people together to focus on specific topics and items and so on. Couple of thoughts occurred to me as Helen and Lisa were speaking a moment ago. Is the Sea Ice for Walrus Outlook is not dissimilar, if you will, from the Sea Ice Prediction Network and the Sea Ice Outlooks, which are done annually during the course of the summer. And putting on my Office of Naval Research hat, where that's my home agency, ONR has recently made a further award to Cecilia Bitts to continue her participation in and contribution to the Sea Ice Prediction Network in recognition of the value that ONR sees in how the Sea Ice Prediction Network and the Sea Ice Outlook effort can inform our continuing efforts to improve sea ice and other predictive capability. The Sea Ice Walrus Outlook could provide similar insights in terms of informing those efforts to improve understanding of sea ice behavior and thus sea ice forecasting, in this case at the fairly local scale of the Northern Bering Sea region. And I'm thinking as a further possibility of somewhere to go to inquire about possible funding to help continue this valuable activity. I don't know if you're aware of the Arctic Funders Group of philanthropic organizations such as the Oak Foundation, the Pew Trusts, and others who have a strong interest in funding Arctic science and related activities, and particularly those that involve Alaska Natives and Arctic indigenous peoples. And I would have thought that if they don't know about the Sea Ice Walrus Outlook, they ought to, and you might consider talking to the Arctic Funders Group as to whether they might be interested in providing financial support to help out and keep it going.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. And Bob Rich has been talking with the Alaska Funders Collective. So hopefully we will be able to branch out and get some additional funding. I have found that so I'm based down in California, and I find that when I talk to people about this project from outside of Alaska, they're hesitant. They're like, whoa, like the hunting kind of bothers people outside of Alaska, which always shocks me. And so that's something where I think the Funders Collective would understand more about Indigenous people and subsistence and not be scared of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, indeed. And this is Helen Martin. One thing too that you said that sort of perked my ears again too is another area that we haven't explored that I think might be interesting for a more specific IARPC collaborations team discussion is really sort of how this kind of project can advance the prediction science and how, we've got these amazing resources and these expert observers, and what we haven't done as much is sort of, okay, that's feeding back into the Weather Service forecast for ice and wind, and how can we sort of use this kind of project to help validate those models and improve them, and sort of like you said too, how to integrate through different scales, which I think is a really interesting scientific problem. I mean, this is like around a few days to a week Sea Ice Prediction Network, and Sea Ice Outlook is, a bit more seasonal, sub-seasonal. So I think there's just some really interesting scientific questions in there that we haven't quite got our heads around yet.
Can I make another comment?
Yes, go ahead, Martin.
As I mentioned in the chat a short time ago, that the Walrus Outlook is a very good example of scientists and Alaska Natives working together and science providing a societal benefit. This reminds me of the fact that IARPC has a set of principles for the conduct of research in the Arctic. They're over 20 years old, and consequently, there is now an effort underway to update them, to make them both 21st century principles, because so much has changed in the Arctic, not just the environment, but socioeconomic issues and the role of indigenous people in science. So the principles, even the old principles that are being updated, they encourage scientists and researchers to consult with indigenous people in the Arctic and to work with them. And as I said a moment ago, the Walrus Outlook is a very good example of a successful partnership between scientists and Alaska Natives. And something else you might consider, and perhaps you've already done this and have been doing this, is you have a model here for a successful collaboration between scientists and indigenous people in the North, and one that perhaps the broader scientific community could benefit from knowing about as they might consider, how do we work with indigenous people in the North, whether they're atmospheric scientists or permafrost scientists or whatever kind of scientist it may be.
And one other quick example that this reminded me of is during the off season in the winter, I was using our Facebook network for Sea Ice for Walrus Outlook to communicate dangerous weather situations to people, especially on St. Lawrence Island. There was flooding forecast in Gamble and just some really severe winter storms. And so I was able to get really specific just for St. Lawrence Island information from the National Weather Service in Alaska and share that on Facebook. And then they took photos of their storm damage and of flooding. And through me and Facebook, we sent it back to the National Weather Service. So it was a really useful way to just get emergency level safety information back and forth. So just having networks like that established in general between scientists and communities is valuable.
Excellent. This is a great discussion. Thanks so much for all the comments. It's exactly what we hope for when we're having these meetings, is that it is a forum for facilitating communication, cross-communication among folks interested in sea ice and beyond. Certainly, Lisa and Helen, the sea ice coordination team, with help from Meredith, will be in touch with you to see whether or not we could, you know, if there's value in having a meeting where we can talk in more depth about some of the ways that you might be able to augment the impact of the sea ice for Walrus Outlook. So we'll put that on our to-do list. Okay, Meredith, hint, hint.
And Jackie, this is Sarah.
Yes.
I just ask you as well in that process to touch base with the observing team, because they actually have a performance element related to community-based observing, and specifically mention it as part of validation of satellite observations. So I think they would be very interested in this too. And the first point of contact there would be Sandy Starkweather.
Oh, okay, super. Okay, I've noted that, and I'm assuming, Meredith, you're scratching that down as well.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.